I'm very honored today to have a PR specialist, Elizabeth Bruce, with us today. First, let me introduce her to everyone. So, Elizabeth has been working as a professional communicator for more than 20 years. She's currently the digital engagement strategist at the BC College of Nurse and Midwives, where she manages the college's website and social media. Oh, wow, that's a lot. She started her career in marketing communications at the BC Lottery Corporation, where she was responsible for retailer communications and winner publicity. She then moved on to health regulations at the Registered Nurses Association of BC, where she managed the association's member and governance communications. Elizabeth moved her focus to digital communications and UX. UX means user experience. When health regulation changed, and she found herself at the College of Registered Nurses of BC and its subsequent successors. Elizabeth has associate diploma in communications from Kwantlen Polytechnic University, formerly as Kwantlen College. A Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Simon Fraser University. And she's currently wrapping up her master's in communication and technology from the University of Alberta. Let's welcome Elizabeth to join us today. I'm so happy and honored to have you.
Thank you. That was a very, very nice introduction. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. So for today's discussion, I'm going to ask her about 10 questions. And if any of our participants today have any questions, please feel free to text us in the chat. I will monitor the chat. So if we talk about something, you have a follow-up question, you can text us in the text box, and then I will stop and look at your text and throw the question back to Elizabeth. All right, let's get started. First question, what are some differences and similarities between PR, public relations, and social media jobs?
I think there's a lot of crossover between the two. I think actually a lot of people who have a strong foundation in PR will often move into social media. I think social media will pull in people from different disciplines, but PR is certainly one area of that. And I think the big thing with the commonality for both of them is that, particularly when you're representing an organization, you're representing a client, is that there's a level of getting the word out of things that you want to share. It's an opportunity for engagement. And a big piece, particularly from the public relations piece of it, is that it's that nurturing and protecting the reputation of the organization. And so, I mean, there is a lot of crossover. I mean, the thing is, social media, I think one piece of it that we don't see as much in public relations is sort of building a personality around the brand that you're working with. Public relations, we're really looking at, and you can do this with social media. I mean, it really depends on why are you on the different platforms, but they both really are looking at kind of nurturing relationships with various stakeholders or interest groups and building on that. Certainly social media, there's a lot more opportunity for engagement in that, down to that real granular level where it's one-on-one. Public relations, you will have a lot of that relationship building, which is so important, but it may be a little bit more formalized than you would see on social media. I think there's so much crossover. In some respects, you can't really kind of slice the two together, depending on, you know, again, it really depends on why you're on. If it's your own personal account, that's completely different. But if you're working for an organization where you're managing their social media account, you do need a lot of the public relations foundations. You need to have a kind of a grasp of some of the principles of what you're doing in that area. There's also that marketing piece that's also pretty key to being successful in your social media. And the big piece on the social media is kind of trying to build a personality, or at least kind of making your organization have a little bit more 3 dimensions than just being, you know, company X, organization X.
That's right. Yeah, thank you for the comprehensive answer. I see that some of our students and audience here are probably not from a PR major, because at UFV, we don't have a PR major here. So let's go back to the definition of PR, public relations. So before the social media era, can I say that most of your jobs were PR jobs for these organizations?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely communications PR. Really looking at audiences, probably, and I think that this is one thing we've really seen in the last 20 years is that your audience is we've gotten so much more segmented, and but yeah, certainly and it's in some respects, it's been hard. It's harder and it's easier in some respects of reaching out to the different audiences. But public relations, definitely in the past. I mean, that really was the work that I was doing, that community, or, you know, / also often called communication. That I'm kind of going blank on this one as far. Sorry, but I think. Yeah, I mean, certainly communications in the past, and really, what for myself, I mean, I really built a lot of my skills were really a lot of those good writing, and that is critical today as it was 20 years ago. You need having a really solid writing and editing skills. That's really, really critical. But yeah, no, I definitely say I have moved from PR more into the social media aspect or digital communications.
Great. So what do you think? What is the PR social media job market's outlook in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think they are going to continue to grow. I think we're seeing it's an opportunity for smaller companies to be able to kind of get to make a mark and get themselves exposed to various different markets. So I think that for smaller companies, it's important. But I also think it's also important for sort of those big organizations that can seem very bureaucratic, can be a bit faceless, and it's an opportunity for them. And I think we're seeing a lot more organizations that are adopting social media. The big challenge is what do you do? Because certainly, I mean, I'm working for a kind of a regulator, so it's a government mandated legislation allows us to operate. So there is some limitations on how much personality can we have. There's a lot of politics around certain issues. There's a lot of legality around a lot of issues. And so that can be quite, it takes some work to kind of find where's your organization's niche, but everyone should be able to find that for their organization. But I would say definitely as we segment and we understand audiences, we understand the people that we're interacting with more and more, the groups of them, there's just so many groups to be communicating to. It just really puts kind of greater demand on trying to make that the communication that we send out is going to be really specific to the person who's going to be receiving it. But they're not getting just that mass email or that mass message that is being kind of sent to everyone. I think there's an expectation from consumers and from the public is that messaging is going to be a much more tailored, and we're really going to be speaking more specifically to individuals or small groups of people rather than these mass communication pieces. So I think social media definitely, it's going to continue to grow. I think honestly, I think we're kind of in the infancy stage of it, when you look at new, well, not even new anymore, but things like TikTok, and we're not doing anything right now with TikTok. And it's kind of looking at this platform and going, okay, well, where would we fit? Where would our audience want to, what do they want to hear from us in that particular platform? So yeah, no, I think that I think you're just going to see continued growth in the foreseeable future. That's for sure.
That's very promising. So you mentioned some like key concepts here. For example, organizational personality on social media. So could you elaborate more? What do you mean by organizational personality for our students?
Sure. There's a couple of things I'm thinking about. I'm thinking like for my own organization, I would say our personality is we're not light. We are, just to give you a quick overview, the college, we regulate anyone who calls himself a nurse or a midwife. They need to be registered with the college. Once a year, everyone needs to renew their registration. We set the standards for how people can practice. We set the standards on how people can enter the practice, so their education piece to their education requirements. And then we also require ongoing, for lack of a better word, I guess, like a professional development. We have certain requirements that they need to meet for there. So, and then healthcare tends to be a little bit serious. COVID is certainly not a light and fun subject. Vaccinations are contentious. So we're dealing with a lot of issues. So I would say that the face of the college is that we want to be a face that is stable. We want to be a source of correct information, that there's that we're conveying a level of integrity, that when you land on our content, that you know that you're in the right place as far as if you're looking for information that you can trust. So that's sort of the personality that we have, and it's not very fun. If you look at some other organizations, and I'm thinking actually right now of BC Hydro their online presence has actually been quite, and they deal with a lot of serious issues too. And I mean, they do deal with some regulation pieces of it, but when they were dealing with the consumer, they actually have, they're producing content that they really are segmenting it, targeting it to specific information. I'm thinking they did a campaign recently on their heat pumps. Well, if you're a homeowner and you're looking at an alternative source of heating and cooling your home, and they did these fun little videos that are short. That's the key nowadays. Don't make anything more than 2 minutes, and that's good. People are going to start losing people. So there's a nice example of they look at their different audiences that they have and developing content that's really specific to that particular niche content. Now, if you're a renter and you are, you're just paying your regular hydro bill, then that may not be obviously important to you, but that content's obviously not going to be targeted to those people. So it's really developing content that's specific to the audiences that and certainly this touches onto marketing, is that it's either something that they think that they need or that they don't know that they need. And the social media aspect gives you that opportunity to kind of create content that will address that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. So let's go back to your personal experience. So why did you choose to work as a PR specialist? What attracted you to this type of work?
Well, I think when I originally first started school, I was probably focusing on publishing was really my area of interest. Journalism was probably more of a focus of mine. And then I got into more of certainly when I was in my diploma program, we did a lot of hands-on design work and a lot of, and that was part of that publishing piece of it. And then from there, it was sort of looking at sort of the business side of it. And I took a number of business classes outside of the college. And then it really just interested me kind of really continuing that publishing design piece of it, the work. And so that's really kind of how I kind of first started working. And I have to admit, when you first graduate, sometimes it's fate has a way of kind of sending you down a direction. I mean, certainly if I didn't like communications, I wouldn't have stayed in the profession, but I really did enjoy the work that I was doing and I wanted to continue on and growing in that direction.
Mm-hmm. So if one of our students is interested in how your typical workday is like, could you describe the college's social media specialist, what will your typical day look like?
So I would think that in any given day, there's no, this is what appeals to me, is there is no typical day, which is a good thing for my personality. So there's a lot of variety as far as what you're working on. So generally in any organization, so you have your social media, what you know you're going to be kind of posting or what messages you want to get out. There's also a number of big projects that are always happening in an organization, and I'm sure this is different at UFV, is that there's always some project going on. There's probably an IT project going on right now. There's probably some initiative going on about launching a new program or something. There's always something going on, and so really it's being connected with all those big projects that are going on, and seeing how that work can feed into the content that you're wanting to get out there to the various audiences. I would say my program that I have, it probably has opportunity. There's lots of opportunity for more growth. We probably, because we are dealing with so many different segmented nurses, and we've gone through a lot of change in the last 3 years. Right now it is a little bit, we have kind of all this nursing content and midwifery content. I know from the user's perspective, it's actually time, what I need to be looking at is actually breaking it into more of those segments. But so yeah, no, I would say that going into work, I have a spreadsheet, I kind of have a schedule, a map of what I want to be posting. There can be, sometimes there's some video content that's very rare for our organization, but I think there's probably more opportunity for that. But yeah, and every day is different. I think the one thing is that being really connected with what's going on in the organization. You can't do social media in a vacuum. You have to be understanding what's going on, because you also have to be prepared that if there's something that I'm communicating on social media, that it's not going to somehow create an issue with another part of your organization. And so it's really important to be connected with what's going on. So that a lot of connecting with other departments and meetings and being part of project teams, and yeah, it's never a dull day. Oh, and then I have to say, a lot of time I will spend on working on visuals, on graphics, on things that are accompanying images. So I would say you do need to have some, it's good to have some good Adobe Creative Suite skills. It will always come in handy. So if you ever have an opportunity to take courses or learn about that, it always comes in handy.
That's very interesting. So you mentioned 4 things, if I could summarize. First of all, familiarize with the organizational goals, organizational mission, and the calendar, organizational calendar, what's going on. Second of all, you talk about, you have a social media calendar sort of thing there, and on certain dates, you are supposed to release certain information out. So you need to get social media contents prepared before that date. And number 3, you also talk about, because you work for such a governmental organization, which is very different from other for-profit businesses, that your social media content needs to be responsible and look out for legal possibilities or legal issues. That's why you need to have a better communication with all other departments to make sure your content is authorized and accurate.
That's exactly right. I think I think having a good understanding, and this is actually a lot of times the social media can be handed off to someone who's not familiar with the organization. And I think the biggest recommendation I would have is really understand what is that the corporate philosophy, what's the mission statement, the mandate of why do you exist, because that needs to be threaded constantly in your content. You always need to kind of be developing your content from that perspective that you're always supporting it, and I think that probably that took me a while to kind of really ensure that you could always test that your content was supporting those messages. Not that it wasn't supporting it, but that actually is a key part. And then that kind of turns back into it also. That should actually be part of your your content, the personality that you're trying to put out there in the world.
Exactly. And number 4, you mentioned also graphic skills such as Adobe design are highly desirable for social media specialists. All right, thank you. And let's move on to the next question. Yeah, a lot of students are interested in where could students find internship or job opportunities in PR and social media in Canada?
It's not I think there's jobs everywhere, but it's knowing where to look. And I think the thing is that if you have contacts, your network of, family and friends, is that to tap into those contacts. You certainly can do the usual things of looking at job boards, whether it's, Indeed or Glassdoor, or there's all sorts of, certainly LinkedIn. But there's also, as I know you've heard, probably everyone's heard this, is that there's so many of the jobs that don't actually ever get posted, or they just never really get publicized to a great degree. And I think one of the things, that networking piece is really, really key. I would say it's asking questions, finding out about organizations. Who do you want to be, like what organization or business that aligns with your values and the things that you're wanting to do? And and sometimes it's just a matter of connecting with people, connecting with the communications people in there, or the marketing people that are in those organizations. Just asking someone, can you sit down and have a cup of coffee with someone in those positions? Some people may be really busy, but a lot of professionals are really pleased to be able to be asked and say, well, you know what, I don't have anything right now, but let me think about it. And sometimes planting that seed for someone like myself, or my colleagues, is that it's like, well, we have had co-op students. We actually haven't had a co-op student in quite a while. And co-op, you need to have a bit of a program with them. You need to have really some nice goals, and so that they're actually, when they're here at your organization, they're not just getting stuck doing photocopying or some kind of horrible unrelated work. You really want them to be doing something that's going to be contributing, but also that they're going away with something with some real skills. Yeah, I think the networking piece is really important. But I would actually be really, you can, if you want to work for, company X, then that's the company you should actually proactively approach them, learn something about them. They may not have something, but someone who works there is like, oh, you know what, my friend who works at another company, they're actually looking for someone. There's all sorts of ways. I think the word of mouth is probably one of the most powerful ways. And then, of course, looking at some of the professional associations like CRPS or IABC, and there's a few others that may really give you an opportunity. But the key, if you join them, is don't sit back. If you just sit back, those opportunities probably are not going to go past you. You need to get involved. You need to interact with the people in those organizations. Those are the people that really get the most out of the memberships.
You mentioned a lot of interesting information. For example, you mentioned one of the most important professional association in PR in BC, CPRS, Canadian Public Relations Society. So if a student wants to join in, how could they join in this organization?
Right now, I'm actually not that involved with CPRS. But the easiest way is probably just to go to the website. They do have student memberships, and they do give a good price for those student memberships. And yeah, that's probably the easiest way to probably connect with that association.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not associated with CPRS, so I don't have like a conflict of interest. However, as a PR professor, I highly recommend students consider joining this organization because every member is every member of CPRS are APR, accredited PR, public relations member, and they work in this field with long work experiences, and they may need intern students or co-op students. So I think definitely joining this organization is a quick way for you to network with other senior members who have already worked in PR and social media for many years. What's the other organization you mentioned? I didn't catch that.
Oh, the International Association of business communicators. Sorry, it's been a while. Yeah, International Association of Business Communicators. And they're very similar to CPRS. They have a student program. There is a lot of crossover between those two associations. So there's whatever kind of fits, and kind of looking at, there may be chapters in your area. And so that's something to consider too. Because I know there's a Vancouver chapter, but I don't know if there are maybe some other chapters out in the Fraser Valley, which would be kind of nice for either of those organizations.
Yeah, and these organizations usually have annual meetings where members gather together. So it's a fabulous opportunity. If you go to one of these meetings, you'll meet all of these people at once. And some of them are even like CEOs of local agency, PR agency, and they're recruiting people. So definitely that's a very efficient way. So International Association of Business Communicators, that's another one. So you can check out their websites. The second method Elizabeth just talked in detail was interpersonal networking skills. So she said you could throw an email to a person who works in the organization where you are interested. And if you have strong values for environment, you probably want to look for an NGO in greenness and environmental climate change, all these issues. And then you find out who is the social media specialist of this organization, and then through an email to them. For example, among the audience, I see there's Katie Clements. Hypothetically, let's say Katie is interested to be an intern at your organization. In her email to you, what should she say? What do you expect her to say in her email to you?
I would indicate what your interests are. I would actually probably include if you're looking for a co-op position, what you would want to, the opportunities that you're looking for, or the skills that you're wanting to build on. And then also a little bit of what you would be bringing to the table. So if you have some, some particular skills that you've already, even if it's customers, if you worked just doing retail, that's a great customer service type of skill that you would be bringing to the organization. And that's something, and those types of skills are critical. They are, and they translate and are, you can use them in all sorts of different environments. So those types of things. But I think of it kind of really look at the skills that you have. And I think a lot of people are really hard on themselves and not really recognizing that the skills that they do have. The fact that you're at university, that means you can get up in the morning. It means you can get your assignments done. You meet deadlines. You have to do group projects. Some of those group projects can be challenging. That means you come out of those projects and you're successful. Like, those are all really good skills that you have to have in the workplace. You have to be able to work with others. You need to be able to collaborate. And those are the types of what we more soft skills, but they're critical to being successful. So if you can kind of identify the things that you do well, and don't sell yourself short. A lot of those skills that you probably aren't really conscious of, like start writing them down. It's like, yeah, actually I can do these. Like, I'm organized, or comfortable public speaking, or maybe that's something you want to be doing more of. But yeah, I would kind of articulate the things that the skills that you do have, the things that you're wanting to build, and hopefully to get out of that. Anything that you can do, especially for a lot of organizations don't have big human resource departments, and so they actually may not map out a job. But if you connect with them and kind of work out what you could be possibly doing, because there's so many, especially when you look at nonprofits, there's so many things that they would like to be doing. They just don't have the resources. And that's probably a lot of organizations. They just don't have the resources to kind of carve off that piece. So if you see an organization that maybe is like, oh, you know what, they are absent from social media and they really would benefit from having a voice or a face, you could probably map out a really nice program for an organization and launch it. Like that'd be fantastic. I think the key is you need to do your homework. You need to figure out who you're talking to. And then, if they're not everyone's going to be, they may not be able to dedicate that, or that's not on their plans that they want to be achieving. But I think if you, eventually you would find a good organization. But I think, be really clear on what you're wanting to get out of it, but also what you're bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the comprehensive answer. We learned a lot what to include in this email. And I guess if Katie says, oh, I've taken Introduction to Public Relations, I've taken social media management course, and also at Communications Department, we provide Introduction to PR 212, social media management. We also provide crisis communication for AD next semester, and a 300 level course called PR campaign. So if Katie says she has taken all these courses, would you give her an extra consideration for these kind of jobs?
Oh yeah, I mean that's absolutely, because I mean the one thing that's not, it's current. The knowledge is current, I'm thinking that at this point, Katie, you're at that point where you really kind of want to get your feet wet in this work. And so, that certainly would be, would definitely be attractive, particularly if there's a certain area. It's like, oh, I mean, one can always stand a little bit more help, or even just bringing in someone who is coming in with some new perspectives can be really invigorating for any of the programs that you're working on.
Great. So let me summarize this key email, how you approach those senior mentors that you want to work with in an ideal organization you're interested. So first, Elizabeth said you should talk about why you're interested in this organization and why you are interested in this position, and show some of the knowledge about this organization. Do your homework. So usually you can go to website to read their mission statement and get some idea about what this organization wants to achieve. And second, she mentions that you should talk about what you can bring to the table. So what are some skills you have already gained that can be transferable to the social media specialist position you're interested in? So talk about your experiences. Number three, if possible, she also mentioned that you can talk about a new initiative or a social media program you want to design for this organization, and you look at the social media accounts of this organization, it doesn't have them right now, and you have a new idea to help with their social media accounts. So you're welcome to bring that in this email. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess initially, it's that first thing is kind of throw out that, like you're fishing, you're throwing out that line and see, is there interest in the first place? And then kind of get that ball rolling. Maybe it's, and you're really gonna have to judge about who, if you sending that email, and also maybe it's an opportunity to come, let's have a chat. Let's spend 15 minutes talking about this. Obviously it really is going to be in contextual in who you're contacting and how much you want to be putting out there. From a cold call, I don't know. I would probably do a very general to begin with, kind of do that high level and pique their interest a little bit of what you could offer, and then if you get a little bit of a nibble, then follow up with a more detailed plan of what you could offer the organization.
Okay, so more general in the first email. So I guess you don't expect that email to be too long, maybe only 2 paragraphs and no more than maybe 100 or 150 words, right?
Yeah, keep it short. We're all scanning. We're all scanning. We're not doing a lot of deep reading. So yeah, initially I would probably keep it fairly brief.
Do you recommend students to attach their CV in that initial email or not?
I think it's not a bad idea, but I think again, I think for me, that probably reading a brief introduction and then the resume, it probably would pique my interest. I'd be like, oh, okay, they spent some time putting this together. Yeah, I don't think it would hurt it.
Okay, so it's not a bad idea to attach your a brief version of your resume, maybe 1 page or something, really brief, so people can get the gist of your experiences. All right, so these are very useful tips for students to get to know professionals and also have a call to action by the end of that email. Only ask for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, Zoom meeting or cafe chat, or even informative interview. So I want to know more about your position. Maybe in this way you can build the first relationship step. Is that right?
Yeah, I think those are those foundations. And just being able to connect with people, and don't be discouraged when people are too busy, because you can get really kind of wrapped up in work. And I know for myself, my work tends to be very cyclical. So we can have these sort of big projects that we're working on, and you don't have a lot of attention. But if someone's really busy, it's like, okay, well, when would be a good time? Would it be better for me to call you back or contact you in 2 weeks? Get to, if that's, I don't get too deterred by if you're not getting an initial response that you're wanting to hear back from them sooner. But yeah, I would keep that in mind.
Yeah, this is very helpful advice. And here I want to share a small story of mine. In order to organize this panel about how to find PR and social media jobs in Canada, I approached 3 people. I found from the CPRS website, I found these 3 people are APR in Vancouver. So I threw them a cold pitch email, introduced myself, what I want to do. I want them to come to talk to us in this event. 1 person didn't apply. So the person was busy, that's fine. The second person replied, but the person said, she is not available this year. She would like to talk to my students next year. I said, okay, good to know you. At least we planned the seat. The third person was your colleague, and Joanna Watts. She's so enthusiastic, and she's so passionate. And she replied my email with so much passion, and I was deeply touched by her reply. And then we started this relationship and planned the whole event. Unfortunately, Joanna was not available this week, and Joanna introduced me to Elizabeth. So this is how we knew each other in this way. All right. Yeah, this is great. And now let's move on to the next question. How is PR different in Canada than United States?
That's a good question. And I don't, I have to say, because I don't have any experience working in the States, so I'm not actually too sure. That's probably, assuming you probably actually have a better sense of that working in the States. I don't really, I'm not gonna tell you that I know, because I don't really know what the answer would be to that. Do you have a better, you must have a better sense.
I probably will answer this from educational background because I think there are a lot of job opportunities with PR and social media right now in the United States. That's why more and more universities are opening bachelors of arts in PR right now. And most of our graduates from a PR bachelor's degree have multiple offers, not one, but multiple offers in hand when they graduate, so they can choose from. Because nowadays, almost every organization, no matter government, business organization, NGO, every organization wants to have someone to manage their social media, to engage dialogues with the publics. That's why they really need specialists, social media specialists. So if you have a PR undergraduate degree or at least a certificate, that will definitely make you stand out from the competition. And the job market has been really good right now in the United States, as far as I know.
Well, given that we are, particularly in the last 2 years with COVID, is that we're living so much of our life, so much of our professional lives and our social lives are actually is online. Those opportunities really, that exposure of having people online just really kind of creates this massive audience that really does bode well for social media career opportunities.
So if students here, they want to know where they can get those certificates or bachelor's degree, where should they go? What are some programs you would recommend here in BC or Canada?
I think a lot of after the I'm having your undergraduate degree, I think is kind of really underpins it. It's really so important. It kind of gives you those critical thinking skills. It's giving you some real skills and knowledge into these specific areas in public relations. What I would say, if you want to supplement it, I would be looking at some of the the universities often will have certificates that they offer that are more of a continuing education. I'm trying to think of, I think SFU has a couple. I don't know if UBC does, but so many of them are now also offered online that there's a great opportunity. So I think it's really looking at the community colleges. A lot of them offer that. I know Qualino has some courses that they're offering those topics. BCIT is also another source. So I would probably kind of peruse the different universities and colleges. Anything that kind of gives you an opportunity to kind of get your feet wet are great, really good.
Yeah, and our department, communications department, are launching a communications bachelor's degree this year in the summer. So that's another thing we can keep in mind.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you, Elizabeth. How is PR and social media changing in the pandemic context?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that the big piece is that we are spending so much time. I don't know if you look at once your phone end of the week and it will tell you how many extra hours you're spending compared to the week before online. We're spending a lot of time online. I think though is that audiences are sophisticated, they're knowledgeable, so they actually have some high expectations of the content that they're going to see. They want the days of it being a kind of handed off to whoever was newer in the organization. I think those days are kind of over. I think they really are looking at people who are managing social media they really need to have good skills. They need to have some polish to that, to the work that they're doing. And it needs to integrate the big pieces. It can't just be messaging off on its own. It needs to really tie into what your organization is trying to achieve, whether it's sales or whether it's information. They really needs to tie into that. And I think the messaging needs to be not one of, there needs to be that kind of hit the psychology around you need to put out that message 7 times before it actually begins to stick. You don't need to use those principles. That there's really an expectation though that kind of high quality content that is going to be engaging and supports what the overall what the organization is trying to achieve. And I think the last couple of years is that it's just making our audiences more sophisticated. So it just puts a little bit more pressure too, that the quality that we're producing has to be good.
That means not only education, but also the in-field practice with the senior member, have mentorship with senior social media specialists is important in your career development too.
Oh, absolutely. In the past, I mean, and this used to even be with the websites. It's like, oh, we'll just give it to Elizabeth, and we'll don't need to worry about it. We just kind of, it's like something you just kind of store. And as we shifted away from any kind of print communication, and people are so much online, it's all of a sudden it's like actually they really do begin to care about their digital presence. It's like, okay, well, someone's developing an information piece or a marketing plan. Is like, well, a big piece of that is actually how you're going to communicate it and how it's going to be rolled out in the online environment. And certainly that is definitely risen in as far as a priority for any organization.
I still have some more questions, but I think within the time limit, I should stop here and open the floor to the audience to ask questions. It's such a great opportunity for them to interact with you directly. So any one of you has any questions?
I guess the question I have is, are people, do they see themselves going into social media as a profession?
Yeah, how about this is a great opportunity. You introduce yourself to Elizabeth. It's a great networking opportunity too. So you can introduce yourself, talk about your future career plans. Anyone?
So I worked in social media before, like as a organization. It's something I would like to do, like work for a bigger company or something instead of a smaller company, because I found that I guess the work dynamic can be kind of hard when you're in a smaller company and they kind of, I guess, throw stuff on you. Like you said, like I guess this company did the same thing as you said, they kind of throw stuff on you.
Yeah.
So,
just plunk this up there. It's like, well, let's not plunk that up there. Let's actually think about how we're going to be introducing this content. Yeah. I think the thing too is, I mean, getting a taste of it is good. And every organization will be a little bit different, but also now having that experience, it gives you you get a clear idea. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to be working like, I want to be doing this work, but this is but having some kind of framework on how you want to be working.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
So Elizabeth, what's your suggestion to Katie if she wants to move on to work for those big companies, let's say Google or Amazon? How could she find those job opportunities?
Well, I think taking that experience and kind of reflecting on it, seeing where the strengths. I mean, every job will have its pros and cons, but and looking at where you want to be building. I think the one thing that I didn't appreciate when I was just coming out of university is I don't think I appreciated that people actually do, if you connect with people, is that they will be interested in helping you, if you have that conversation. So having this, what would be the best approach is like, if you want to be working for Google, they're always, I'm sure they're always recruiting. I would start kind of seeing, going into LinkedIn, seeing where people are and connecting with them that way. There's lots of different ways. Like the thing is, there's no one way of the path of how you can achieve or work for the organization that you want. There's lots of different ways and there's different angles. And the key is really not to get, don't get deterred by busyness of other people. Because ultimately, if you dig a little bit further, a lot of people really want to hear, and they also want to help. I mean, it's nice to be asked, hey, what can I do to help someone else along? It's a nice thing about human beings. And I think a lot of people will make time, but you just got just making that extra connection, and it's hard initially, especially if you're like myself. I'm an introvert. It doesn't come to me naturally. It's something I have to push myself out of my comfort zone.
All right, so I have still some questions here. How has this recent interest in social justice, including residential school and Black Lives Matters, changed how PR professionals work? How do you address those social justice values in your social media content?
And it starts really, I mean, it can start obviously with me doing this work, but I think as far as like an organization too, is that it's really, we've had a real commitment to looking at these issues and how we expect this work to kind of, if we were looking at reconciliation and looking at addressing racism in the workplace or work in the environment, is like, how are we going to support that? And it's looking at your values and looking at, there's things that maybe we've done in the past. It's like, well, you know what, maybe we aren't doing that as well as we can. If these are our values, we need to start kind of putting them out there. And so I think that's a key piece, but I think it's an ongoing discussion and ongoing, you can't, this is not a checkbox. Yeah, we did the safety check, we did the fire drill, so we're good for another year. These are fundamental different ways of addressing and thinking of really being reflective about the work that we've done and how we may be failing particular groups, or we just have not been as inclusive or as accommodating as we needed to be. And so though, I mean, it kind of starts with those kind of core values and organization. What are you trying to achieve? And as a person, like, how do we want to be communicating? How do we want, it would not be okay for me to be wanting to, put things that are insensitive or exclude particular groups, and not caring, using, even like how we're talking about pronouns. I mean, you need to be sensitive to how we're communicating to all these different audiences. Are we leaving people out? Are we leaving people behind? So I think in my communications, it's certainly somehow I'm looking at my work, I am looking at it differently. It's like, you can't just do things by rote. You did it in the past this way. Being thoughtful, and sometimes like the smallest adjustment in how you're communicating can have a big impact. So it's huge, and it's good. It's really good. I think it's good for all of us to be addressing these issues.
Definitely. How do you balance the different needs and views of publics on one issue? Because some publics may have opposite stance on one issue, let's say climate change. Some publics, they are strongly pro environmental protection, so they really want to stop the gas lines building, all these things. Some other publics, they care about local jobs, especially if they're located in those near those big gas companies, petroleum companies, and they are worried about local residents are losing jobs. So we have like a complex social media environment where publics have opposite, contradictory opinions on certain issues. How could you balance these issues on your social media content?
It can be a bit of a tightrope at times. And we do have certain issues that can be very, very polarizing. I think the one thing is it's looking at your organization, and it's like, what are the values of your organization, and what do they hold near and dear? So, or things that you're really going to go and take a very strong position on. You don't want to be alienating at the same time, but in our situation is a little bit different because we are a government organization. For us, I mean, our issue would be vaccinations, is that we need to back the decision that the government has taken, and there are workplaces where it's absolutely required. You cannot practice as a nurse or midwife unless you're vaccinated. And so, you know, we certainly have had a lot of criticism online where people are not saying that, that they don't agree with us. And I guess for us, and a lot of these issues, because there is actually a legal element, and that sometimes is the case, is that we do need to be, we probably don't engage with a lot of the criticism, particularly, but then at the same time, when some of the criticism, there probably isn't really a lot of opportunity for movement. So it is tricky, and I think for us, it's really being respectful all the time, and you know, thank you for your comments, but this is the way it is. and try to maybe reframe how the perspective of where we're coming from. Sometimes that's not going to make the message more palatable, but at least being respectful and honest is the best approach that we can take, or that I'm taking for our social media.
Mm-hmm. So being respectful and assertive at the same time. Yeah.
But you know what, we could probably talk for hours about this issue, because it's not, it's a big one.
That's right. Thank you so much for your answers today and joining us today. We have learned so much from you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being able to talk to the group. Appreciate it.
Yeah. While we wrap up, since Katie is our audience here, do you have any other last question you want to ask before we wrap up today?
I'm happy to answer any questions. If something comes up afterwards, you're more than welcome to email me. I know Samina has my email address. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, if you need.
And all the best.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Elizabeth, and thank you for coming to the panel, Katie and other audience.